The courtroom moves on autopilot, fines, forms, the soft clack of a clerk's keyboard, until a young man in a tailored jacket steps to the podium. 25, maybe, polished, chin high, the smile of someone used to doors opening. The clerk reads, Aiden Marshall. 35 over in a 25. Yes, sir, he says before the judge can speak. But honestly, that limit is theatrical. No one actually drives that slow there. Pages pause in Judge Caprio's hand. He looks up, not unkind, not impressed. You called the law theatrical. I'm saying it's a minor thing. Aiden's grin cuts sideways. Look, I could have just paid and kept my day. But, well, you know who my uncle is, sir. Paper hushes like a tide going out. A few heads turn, someone exhales through their teeth. The judge lets silence do the first correction. In this room, Mr. Marshall, Caprio says, even and cool, there are no uncles, aunts, or last names. There is only what happened and who accepts it. Aiden's shrug is fast, neat. With respect, Your Honor, this is a formality. Then, Caprio replies, let's make it instructive. He nods to the monitor. A clip fills the screen, dusk light, a crosswalk chalked white, a sedan slicing into frame. A pedestrian steps out, hesitates, yanks back as the car lances past, a sleeve snapping in the wake. In the gallery, a handful of phones rise and freeze, breath thins to a thread. Still a formality? The judge asks without looking away. Aiden's jaw ticks. He jumped out. I didn't do anything wrong. The footage reruns at half speed, the blinking pedestrian signal, the amber wash of a street lamp, the quick stutter of the man's hands as he flattens himself against the curb. No screech of brakes, only the thin electric whine of a camera mic. Caprio folds his hands. Speed narrows the world, Mr. Marshall. It clips off what doesn't fit. People, for instance. Aiden lifts his chin. With respect, it's a dead stretch of road. Everyone goes fast there. Everyone, the judge repeats, as if testing the word. Overhead, the air unit hums. A heel taps once on marble and stops. A bailiff shifts, then stills again. Caprio's gaze returns to the young man. You say this is small. But the small things are where we keep each other alive. Crosswalks. Limits. Blinkers. Courtesies that cost seconds and save years. Aiden works his lower lip, says nothing. The judge turns back to the screen, freezes the frame on the pedestrian's face, eyes wide, mouth open, a life measuring distance in inches. That's not a number on a ticket, Caprio says softly. That's the moment his family almost met a different afternoon. The room holds. No coughs. No rustle. Outside, a siren passes and fades. At the podium, Aiden's confidence doesn't break, it recedes, one step, then another, like water discovering there's less shore than it thought. He swallows. The jacket looks tighter now. Mr. Marshall, Caprio says, voice level, if this is a formality, it's the kind that teaches. We will proceed. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Caprio closes the case file and folds his hands on the bench. His tone, calm but deliberate, slices through the stillness. Mr. Marshall, tell me, what do you do for a living? I'm a consultant, Aiden answers quickly. City administration. I help the mayor's office with project reviews. So you work with the mayor? I'm related to him, sir. He's my uncle. A slight rustle moves through the courtroom. Caprio nods once, as though confirming something he already knew. And that's supposed to matter here. I don't see the point in pretending, Aiden replies with a thin smile. Some things just carry weight whether we say it out loud or not. I didn't mean disrespect. I'm just being efficient. Efficient, Caprio repeats, the word dry on his tongue. Is that what you call skipping over the law? I call it common sense, Aiden says. The law should prioritize real problems. This is bureaucracy. The judge studies him, expression unreadable. Your uncle runs a city where 14 people died this year because someone decided the rules were bureaucracy. Aiden's eyes flicker, but he keeps his tone level. That's not fair, Your Honor. I'm not reckless. I've driven that road hundreds of times, nothing ever happens there. Until something does. The line lands heavy, quiet. Caprio reaches for another sheet of paper. Do you know what this is? Aiden shakes his head. It's a crash report, the judge says. 3 years ago. Same neighborhood. Vehicle registered to a marshal. The driver lost control at 45 in a 30 zone. The young man stiffens. That was my father. Caprio nods slowly. He didn't survive. Aiden's jaw tightens. Yes. But that has nothing to do with this. It has everything to do with this, the judge says softly. You inherited his car, his name, and maybe his habit of thinking the law won't catch up. Aiden looks down at the table, eyes darting like he's searching for a version of himself that can still win the argument. I didn't mean any harm, he mutters. I don't think you did, Caprio replies. Neither did your father. He was 10 miles over the limit. Just 10. His passenger was your mother, wasn't she? The silence stretches like glass about to crack. She survived, Aiden says finally. But she never drove again. Caprio nods once. So you know what speed can take. Yet you still treat it as a joke. Aiden's composure begins to fray. He exhales sharply, eyes flicking to the side as though trying to anchor himself. You don't understand. I'm under pressure every day. I'm expected to show confidence. My family, everyone, expects me to be untouchable. Untouchable, Caprio repeats again. That's a dangerous word. It's what men start to believe when the rules have always bent for them. The young man opens his mouth to argue, but no sound comes out. The certainty that carried him in here has begun to hollow out, leaving something quieter, uncertain, smaller. The judge softens his tone, almost gentle now. You think the ticket is beneath you. But maybe what you're really afraid of is the mirror it holds up. Aiden looks up, startled. What mirror? The one that shows you're more like your father than you want to believe. The words land like a verdict that has nothing to do with fines or speed limits. The room stays silent, except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Aiden's expression shifts, first resistance, then something almost like shame. He rubs his wrist, a restless motion he doesn't seem aware of. Caprio leans back, the firmness in his voice returning. We'll continue. But understand this, Mr. Marshall, responsibility doesn't skip a generation. Sometimes it waits until you're ready to face it. The young man doesn't answer. He only nods, barely perceptibly, the first crack appearing in his self-assured facade. The clerk calls for the next exhibit, and the courtroom breathes again, though no one dares make a sound. The temperature of the room has changed, what began as arrogance has cooled into the uneasy heat of reckoning. Caprio turns another page in the file. His eyes narrow slightly, not in judgment, but in precision. Mr. Marshall, he says, the footage we reviewed wasn't your first appearance on record that evening. 10 minutes earlier, another traffic camera caught you at a different intersection, using your phone while driving. Aiden's mouth tightens. I was checking navigation. I didn't text anyone. The judge tilts his head. At 60 miles per hour, in a 25 zone. It was a quick glance, Aiden says, trying for confidence but overshooting into defiance. Caprio doesn't blink. According to the report, you were filming. Would you like us to open the video? The air in the room shifts. Aiden's fingers tap the podium. No need, sir. That clip's gone. The judge leans back, patient. Deleted? Something like that. Caprio nods once toward the clerk. Not quite. The city's traffic system syncs automatically with police servers. Everything uploaded is archived. The screen lights up again. The sound of wind fills the room, the image shakes from motion. Aiden's car weaves through traffic, phone raised, his voice loud and easy. Look at this, old cop standing there like a scarecrow. I'm flying past him. What a joke. The laughter on the video echoes against marble walls. Then, silence. The judge waits. That was your idea of humor? It was just a clip, Aiden says weakly. Everyone posts things like that. But not everyone almost hits a man at a crosswalk. His words are calm, but they fall like stones. Aiden looks toward the gallery, no sympathy there, only faces he can't read. Caprio studies the file again. The officer you mocked, Sergeant O'Connor, passed away 3 days later. A high-speed pursuit. Died doing the same job you found amusing. The young man blinks, thrown off balance. I didn't know. No, Caprio replies. You didn't care to know. The judge's tone doesn't rise, yet the room feels smaller, tighter. He had a son, Caprio adds, voice quieter now. A rookie cadet. He's here today, in the back. Said he wanted to see what people look like when they think the law doesn't touch them. Every sound in the room disappears. Even breathing seems intrusive. Aiden turns, searching the back row until his gaze lands on a young man in uniform. The cadet's expression isn't angry, just steady, unblinking, unbearable. Aiden looks away first. Caprio speaks again, softer but sharper. The law doesn't ask for perfection, Mr. Marshall. It asks for awareness. The moment we treat it as decoration, someone pays the price. Usually, it's not the one who thinks he's untouchable. Aiden opens his mouth, then shuts it. His hand trembles slightly on the stand. The arrogance that filled his words earlier has drained out, leaving only the raw sound of truth landing where pride used to live. The judge studies him a moment longer. Tell me, he says finally, what do you see when you watch that video? Aiden's voice cracks on the edge of a whisper. Someone I don't want to be. Caprio nods slowly. Then maybe we're finally getting somewhere. The lights from the monitor fade, leaving a pale reflection on the courtroom wall, Aiden's own image, ghost-like, projected over the judge's bench. He looks up at it once, then down again. No one claps. No one speaks. The silence itself becomes the lesson. Caprio sits still for several seconds. The weight of the last video, the faces in the room, the name on the file, all of it hovers in the silence. When he finally speaks, his tone is low and precise, each word measured. Mr. Marshall, he says, do you understand that what you did isn't just a traffic violation? It's arrogance toward the system your uncle swore to defend. Aiden's jaw works once. With all due respect, sir, I didn't mean it like that. It was an accident. The judge's eyes sharpen. Then let's hear from someone who paid for that accident. A murmur moves through the benches as Caprio nods toward the back. A young man rises, mid-20s, in a cadet's uniform, posture straight but his hands clenched. He steps forward to the witness stand. This is Mark Richards, the judge says quietly. Sergeant O'Connor's son. Mark doesn't look at Aiden at first. When he does, his gaze is steady, unblinking. He laughed at my father, he says flatly. At a man who spent 20 years standing on that street to keep others safe. Aiden's voice barely holds. I didn't know who he was. I wasn't mocking. You didn't have to know, Mark cuts in. You just had to care. The words land hard, clean. Even the bailiff shifts his stance as if to absorb the blow. Mark steps closer, the air between them thick with everything unsaid. He was tired that day, he adds. Said he'd seen too many people treat the law like it was optional. You proved him right. Aiden opens his mouth, but no sound comes. His throat locks around the apology that doesn't yet know how to form. Mark reaches into his pocket and takes out a small brass badge, the edges worn smooth from years of touch. He places it gently on the judge's bench. That was my father's. I don't want it used as a symbol or an excuse. I just want someone, anyone, to answer honestly for once. Caprio studies the badge for a long beat, then turns to Aiden. Are you ready to do that? The young man stares at the metal gleam on the table. I don't know, he says finally. I'm just tired. Of what? Caprio asks. Of all of it. The expectations, the image, the pretending. Everyone assumes I have everything handled because of my name. But it's like living in a script I didn't write. I can't breathe in it anymore. The words come out cracked, raw, the practiced tone gone. For the first time since entering the courtroom, his voice sounds human, unsteady, young. Mark watches him without satisfaction, only a slow recognition that the man in front of him isn't a villain, just someone lost behind his own armor. Caprio doesn't interrupt. He lets the silence stretch until it fills every corner of the room. It's not awkward, it's cleansing. The gallery doesn't shift, doesn't whisper. Even the clerk looks down, giving the moment its space. Aiden's shoulders sag as though the effort of holding himself together has finally become too heavy. I didn't want to be this person, he says, almost to himself. But I don't know who I am without the attitude. The judge folds his hands, his voice gentle but firm. Maybe today is where you start finding out. Aiden lifts his eyes, and for the first time they meet the judge's not as a challenge, but as a plea. Caprio nods slightly, then looks at the badge again, its dull gold reflecting a thin line of courtroom light. He doesn't say anything more. He doesn't need to. The silence between them says everything. No one moves. The only sound is the slow, uneven rhythm of Aiden's breathing, like someone learning, after a long time, how to stand without a mask. Caprio reaches forward and rests the fallen badge on the table before him. The metal gleams faintly under the courtroom light. His voice, when it comes, is deliberate, soft, but unyielding. You said everything in your life was decided for you, he says. Well, not today. Today, you make your first decision yourself. Aiden looks up, startled. The judge gestures to the clerk, who walks forward with a printed document. Caprio takes it, unfolds it carefully, and begins to read. This is a letter, he says, from your uncle, the mayor, received early this morning. He clears his throat and reads aloud, my nephew, Aiden Marshall, can be impulsive, but he has a good heart. I ask the court to view his case with understanding. He simply made a mistake. The paper folds closed with a sharp crack that echoes in the still room. Caprio sets it down beside the badge. I've met many good men who believed their mistakes didn't count, the judge says quietly. They all had reasons. They all thought the rules bent for them. But what separates decency from damage is not whether you err, it's whether you stand up and face it. Aiden doesn't speak. His throat tightens. For once, he doesn't seem to have the vocabulary for defense. Caprio's hand moves to a drawer beneath the bench. When it opens, he removes two envelopes, one pale, one gray, and places them side by side. You will choose, he says. The first holds a standard fine. The second holds an address. Aiden frowns slightly. An address? Yes, Caprio replies. A community veterans center on the west side. They're short on volunteers. 40 hours of service, cleaning, cooking, listening. You can pay with money or with time. But the second option, Mr. Marshall, will cost you far more, and teach you far more. The air feels heavier now. Aiden stares at the envelopes like they're two mirrors reflecting entirely different futures. What happens if I refuse both, he asks after a moment. Then I impose the maximum fine, Caprio says evenly, and notify the city administration that the mayor's office may wish to review its consultant's record. A faint ripple moves through the gallery, some pity, some anticipation. But, the judge adds, if you choose the second envelope, this case ends here. No record, no report. Just work, and maybe, if you're lucky, a little clarity. Aiden looks down, his jaw clenched. You're not making it easy. I'm not supposed to, Caprio answers. The law isn't meant to make us comfortable. It's meant to make us aware. For a long moment, no one breathes. Then, quietly, a voice breaks the stillness. I'll go with him, says Mark Richards. Every head turns. The young cadet steps forward again, his tone steady but stripped of its earlier edge. If he goes to that center, I'll volunteer too. Not as a cop. Just as a son. Maybe we can both learn something about my father. Caprio studies him, then gives a faint, approving nod. That would be fitting. Aiden's lips part slightly, his composure slipping. Why would you do that? Mark shrugs. Because someone has to go first. The young man stands there, waiting, not for thanks, not for forgiveness, but for recognition. The space between them no longer feels adversarial, but human. Aiden glances again at the envelopes. His fingers tremble slightly as they hover above them. The pale one, money, convenience, escape. The gray, work, humility, exposure. He picks up the gray. I'll do it, he says quietly. A hush falls over the room, followed by the faintest collective exhale. The tension that filled the air since the beginning starts to dissolve, not in applause, but in something heavier, purer, relief. Caprio nods once, almost imperceptibly. Then the court accepts your decision. He places the badge gently back into the center of the desk, between them all. Justice, he says softly, isn't punishment. It's recognition. No one claps. No one speaks. But when Aiden turns to leave, every eye in the room follows, not out of curiosity this time, but quiet respect. For the first time, the young man looks smaller, and better for it. A week later, the courtroom feels different, warmer, quieter, as if the air itself remembers what happened there. Judge Caprio is halfway through a morning docket when the clerk leans in to whisper something. He nods once. The door opens. Aiden Marshall steps inside. No tailored jacket, no practiced smile, just a plain gray shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the edges of fatigue softening his face. The arrogance is gone, replaced by something steadier, humbler. Caprio looks up. Mr. Marshall, he says, surprised but not unkind. You've returned. Yes, sir, Aiden replies. I made my choice. He walks forward and places a sealed envelope on the podium. Caprio gestures for him to open it. Inside is a single photograph, Aiden, crouched beside an older man in a wheelchair, both holding mops, the veteran center stretching behind them in warm morning light. I thought it would feel like punishment, Aiden says quietly. But it didn't. It felt honest. The first real thing I've done in years. Caprio studies the photo for a long moment. The image says more than testimony ever could. What did you learn there, he asks. Aiden hesitates, then answers, that service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. And that people who've lost everything still find ways to give. It made me realize how small I've been living. The judge leans back, his voice measured. Most people never see that truth, Mr. Marshall. They mistake status for worth. But worth is quieter, it shows up in work that no one notices. A soft murmur passes through the benches. Even the bailiff, stone-faced as ever, glances down as if collecting himself. Aiden clears his throat, emotion flickering at the edges of his voice. I wanted to thank you, sir. For not just finding me. For making me look at myself. Caprio nods. You did that part on your own. He turns slightly toward the gallery. Mr. Richards. From the back row, Mark stands. He's still in uniform, though his expression carries less weight now. Caprio retrieves the brass badge, the one that once sat between guilt and memory, and holds it for a moment before handing it to the young cadet. Your father would have wanted you to see this through. And I think he'd have been proud of what both of you have done. Mark accepts it carefully, his voice steady. Thank you, Your Honor. Then, after a pause, he looks at Aiden. The center said they could use help next weekend. I'll be there. Aiden nods, a faint, almost shy smile breaking through. I'll see you there. The exchange lasts only seconds, but in that moment, the distance between them, the son of a fallen officer and the man who mocked his father, closes without ceremony. Caprio folds his hands again. Mr. Marshal, this court is satisfied that your service fulfills your obligation. Case dismissed. He pauses, eyes softening. But remember this, the law doesn't exist to make people perfect. It exists to remind them who they still can be. The words linger like an afterimage as Aiden stands in silence. He nods once, then turns to leave. At the doorway, sunlight pours through the tall windows, cutting across the floor in long, golden stripes. He steps into it slowly, the light catching the edges of his face. For a brief second, he closes his eyes, breathing not like a man escaping judgment, but one finally free of pretense. In the back, Mark slips the badge into his pocket and watches him go. Caprio watches too, his gavel resting untouched. There's no applause, no spectacle, only the soft sound of footsteps fading into the hallway. Then, almost to himself, the judge murmurs, justice doesn't always punish. Sometimes it simply remembers. The room stays still, reverent, as though the echo of those words, of that small redemption, might stay suspended there a little longer, before the next case begins.